All right. Good morning, everybody that's joining us for our Friday workshop. I see a couple more people hopping on, so thank you guys. And for anybody that is here in Zoom with us or anybody that's watching on social, whether you're on LinkedIn or Facebook, if anybody's got questions, comments throughout, please feel free to drop them right in the comments section or in our chat here in Zoom. And we will make sure to get any questions or comments to the speakers. Or wait till the Q&A just to make sure that you guys get those answered. To start out, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Nikki Caboose. I'm the VP of Development with Palm Beach Tech. And now, as of Wednesday, actually, new name is South Florida Tech. We actually just had our 5th year anniversary on Wednesday evening and announced the new name and new rebrand. So our same mission that we had building the Palm Beaches into a tech hub is now building South Florida into a tech hub. So over the last year, for anybody that wasn't aware, didn't see any of the small subliminal messages that we'd been making on our social media pages, we've been using, South Florida a lot more recently over the last year, and now we have our membership ranges from Martin County to Miami. So, you should be seeing over the next year or two a lot more regional efforts. We've been partnering with organizations from our colleges, universities, coding schools in Boca Raton, Miami, across the region to organizations like Venture Cafe, which we had an event with last night as well. So definitely, stay tuned for a lot of really cool new things coming up. A little bit about the organization as well is for anybody, whether you're a corporate headquartered company or whether you're the physical tech talent that's here in the area. We have everything from like what we're doing today, workshops. It could be something on using technology with finances like we're doing today. It could be intro to coding. We've had agile workshops, anything to help you guys educationally or introduce you to another piece of tech. Two, we have panel discussions, our tech talks on Mondays. So there's definitely enough to get involved in, and we will be seeing more of that, like I said, with the expansion. So I'd like to introduce this morning, Zach, and please, Zach, I always, with the last name, is it Merschdorf? Did I say it right?
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
I'm always like, I think I say it right in my head, but I don't know if I do.
Well, I thought I was saying your last name right, and I apparently was not. I always said Cavis, so.
Yeah, most people do. Yeah, I always tell people it's caboose like a train caboose. That's the easiest way to remember it, but I answered by caboose for sure. But yes, Zach is with us this morning from Rinehimerbaker. He's going to be the instructor this morning, talking about using some cloud technologies to better our finances within our companies. So I want to hand it over to Zach. And please tell us a little bit more about yourself, your role there, and of course the company and what you all do as a whole. And then whenever you're ready, please feel free to take it away, share your screen. And like I said, I'll be helping to watch with the questions in chat.
Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate the introduction, Nikki, and hopefully I can live up to. I didn't know I was going to be called an instructor this morning, so hopefully I can live up to those.
Well, you are when you do a workshop. Today might be the first, but you are an instructor this morning.
I hope I can fill those big shoes here. So I guess step one is seeing if I can successfully share my screen. So we'll start with that one as a litmus test.
There you go. Yep, I see it.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, so what Nikki was saying is, I'll give a little bit of a background here as I get into the PowerPoint, a slide or two in. But today we just want to talk about, managing finance teams remotely, what that's like, and not only myself, but our team, which some of them are on the call today here. That's really what we do at Rinehimerbaker, and even pre-COVID, that was kind of our, the flag that we flew was being able to have a finance team internally, not only that can work remotely, but enabling, our customers and people that we work with and people that we help to do the same and be able to have anywhere, anytime secure access to their data, better insights, better reporting, and, not only doing that, but also being able to do it, again, remotely anywhere you have an internet connection. So I'll just go ahead and jump right into it here. I like to give a little bit of an agenda anytime I do anything, just so people know what we're going to run through today, and it kind of prevents people from asking, well, what are you going to ask? You're going to talk about that. You're going to talk about that. So I like to give an agenda. So we'll go through a little bit of introductions, background of myself and the company. I wanted to start by giving a little bit of a background of the state of remote work right now, and I pulled some data from online I thought was pretty interesting. Obviously, remote work is probably the hot topic buzzword of 2020 so far. And then the next thing I kind of want to jump into, the evolution from pre-digital kind of into, the digital age, what cloud technology really is now, what that means. People talk about it all the time, cloud, 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 but, a lot of people don't know how we got there or really what it is. So talking about those pieces, talk about why it's important, and then obviously going to spend, a good piece of time on what everyone's here to learn about today, which is, how do I move to an effective, remote system? How do I manage my team's finances remotely? That's the million-dollar question, which hopefully I have a close to $1 million answer for. And then we'll do some Q&A and stuff at the end. And again, if you want to send them in on social media or in the chat box, Nikki and Monica and Catherine from our side, there's multiple people watching it, so we'll make sure we get your questions answered. So a little bit about Rinehimer-Baker. People sometimes are a little confused with what we do. They look at our website and they're like, wow, you guys do a lot of things. What does all this mean? Really, if I had to sum it up in one sentence, it's, we're a cloud accounting solutions firm that provides game-changing outsourced accounting and financial technology consulting. I've thrown up on the slide here some customers of ours that you may or may not recognize. Most of them are local. We've worked with the Three Natives franchise, 1000 North, which is a higher-end restaurant, semi-private club concept up here in Jupiter. Hungry Planet, which is a plant-based meat manufacturing company, startup VC-funded. MemberClicks, which is a VC-funded software company we provided a tremendous amount of value to over the last couple of years. And then a member of Palm Beach Tech's own, we just finished up a project with Shea Berman over at Digital Resource. Really knocked it out of the park with him these last couple months, and are continuing to do some more work with him. So, and I know he's a big part of the Palm Beach Tech community for any of you guys that know him. But kind of to break down a little bit more of what we do is, on the accounting side, we kind of have two different areas that we work on within Cloud Accounting Solutions. So outsourced accounting, what is that? Outsourced accounting is fractional accounting help all the way from bookkeeping level services all the way up to outsourced controllership and CFO services. So if you don't have an in-house bookkeeper, don't have an in-house CFO controller, we can provide those services on a fractional basis, either to, if you don't want to have an in-house finance team, or you have an in-house finance team and you need them augmented, and you need some specific skill sets, we help with that as well. And then the financial technology consulting, really what that is that's the designing, architecting, and implementing a lot of these automated cloud financial systems that we're going to talk about here a little bit later in the slides, in the slideshow here, which is, companies that are like, okay, I want this technology. I think this is great. I really see where the fintech world is going, but I don't need accounting help. I just want these solutions. We help on an outsourced, kind of consulting basis to help companies pick the right solutions, implement them, and make sure that they're, adopted properly within the firm. And then we do offer, tax and next level financial counseling services as well. But I try not to get too much on the tax side. So don't ask me any tax questions today. I don't help with 1040s. And then a little bit about me. I'm not gonna talk about myself a lot. I actually hate putting slides in about, talking about myself. But we'll send the slide deck out after the presentation this morning. So if you guys want to go check out my LinkedIn or anything like that, or send me an email, feel free. But I'll let you guys read my background. I don't want to go into all that, and it makes me feel bad sometimes to talk about myself. So I'll let you guys read that at your leisure afterwards. So really to start talking about the state of remote work. So where are we now? So I found a really great study that was done just recently in the last couple months. To start with, I'll go through the demographics, because as someone who has a math, economics, statistics background, when I look at a study, I'm always like, oh, I don't want to believe any of these numbers until I know where it came from. So just to kind of run through that, it was over 3,500 people were involved in the study, with a majority of them being in the U.S., UK, or Canada. So either in our market or kind of a similarly developed market. Most of them working in the software or IT field. A good majority of them have at least a year or more of remote work experience, which I think is kind of important and relevant when we're talking about these results here, because that means these are people that had remote work experience before COVID started. These were people that were at least doing, at least had 6 months experience of remote work before, in the pre-COVID world. And most of these earners are, high earners. These are people that are, salaried or high income, consultants, so these are people that are, fairly well along in their career. So I think it's a good sample size that they pulled here, or a good sample set, I should say, that they pulled. So if you see kind of in that bottom left corner, you see that most people like to work remote. Not only do they like to work remote, but 20% of people say, I want to work remote even more. So out of this sample set, I think, it's pretty clear that 90% of the population wants to work remotely, or even more so than they are now. So I think it's definitely, I think that kind of puts to rest the, well, remote work, is it here to stay? What's going to happen after COVID? It's going to go back to business as usual. And that's just not the case. People like remote work. It's become even more prevalent now. And I hate to be a little harsh about it, but it's almost kind of like adopt or die with businesses now. People, employees are coming to expect being able to work remote, and to be able to attract and retain talent, companies are going to have to deliver that. Moving into the upper right-hand corner, they talked about, what's the biggest benefit that people are seeing to working remotely. And the two biggest items have to deal with flexibility. Flexibility in schedule and flexibility to work from anywhere. And we'll talk about later how using cloud financial tools, it really gives people that flexibility. And I can say personally myself that, I have the flexibility to not make my own schedule, but I have a lot of flexibility with my schedule and to work remotely as much as I would like. So being someone that has that, I can definitely say it's one of the biggest reasons I like working in the field I'm working in, and I'm working in the company I'm at, is that flexibility. So I think that's kind of, for me, is kind of a case in point. But oddly enough, people's biggest struggle with working remotely is collaboration. That was the tie for number one struggle that people were having. Was they like working remotely, they like having that flexibility, but collaboration and communication is their biggest issue. And I would almost even argue that if they were collaborating and communicating more, probably loneliness would go down, but I don't want to make any assumptions on that. So just wanted to give a little bit of a background to this, and really tell people from a statistical standpoint, this is real, this is here to stay. Flexibility is what everybody's looking for, yet collaboration and communication are the biggest issues. Obviously, Zoom, Slack, Teams helps with collaboration and communication, and they connect us more. But my argument, and hopefully I'll make it later in the slide here, is that it goes beyond just text, audio, and video. Obviously Zoom, Slack, Teams, we're on a Zoom call now, are amazing tools. We use them all the time internally. We recommend our customers use them. They've been buzzwords in the stock market and, in just conversations recently, and they're definitely great tools, but that's not enough. And clearly, I think by these results, that is indicative of that. So just to give a little bit of the background here, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the slide, but a little bit of the evolution to cloud technology. So cloud, or before the cloud and before really software took off, before there ever was even such a thing as anyone even thought of like a Palm Beach Tech, everything was pre-digital. Everything that was done in finance departments, and we're talking, pre-digital, 50 plus years ago, everything's paper-based. There's really no automation. If there was automation, it was some sort of paper-based, you put a punch card in a machine or something like that. All the security around financial data was physical based, locking check stubs in a drawer, restricting people's access to certain paperwork or documents internally, whether they be, financial reports or whatever, they, kept in safes or locked in people's offices. Everything was physical based. There was no, computer security concerns. And all the collaboration was totally geographically based. I mean, obviously you had telephones that came around the early 1900s, and people could collaborate that way, but there was no phone, there were no cell phones, there were no screen sharing, video calling, Teams messages, and like none of that existed. So if you wanted to work collaboratively with someone on a project, they either had to work in the same physical office as you, or you had to go fly to meet them somewhere. And then really when technology started to come around, everything was for the most part on premises. So what I mean by on premises is there's a server in your office, a big IBM machine in your office, whatever it is. There was something that was on your site. It wasn't connected to the internet, or maybe it was connected to the internet, but everything was hosted on site. Obviously, moving to technology provided some automation, not what we see today, but it had some automation. Again, if it was connected to the internet, it was probably slow, unstable, if you had maybe a VPN, something like that, if it was even available at all. And it started to become a combination of physical and user-based security concerns. So, you still had these concerns of check stubs and things like that, or, check stock and stuff in the office, but now you have data that's sitting on a server. Where is that server sitting? Is it locked in a server room? So now you have a little bit more concerns, who's accessing it if you have VPN access, who has, how do you monitor security around that? In really on-premises early software, and there still is a lot of on-premises around, so I'll say that. It's expensive to maintain, expensive to make sure that your data is not corrupted or is, adequately backed up and stored, because at the end of the day, you're the one footing the IT costs, or whoever the company is. And then really where we're at now, like the evolution that's come over the last 5 or 10 years, I'll really say has taken off, is the move to the cloud, which has the greatest opportunity for this collaboration, for integrations between softwares, for automation. A lot of cloud technology has a lot more robust security features. You don't have to worry about on-premises servers and things, enhanced audit features, and all in all, this reduces IT costs and data stability concerns because, Amazon Web Services is handling your server problems, not you and, your IT team with an on-premises server. So what is the cloud is a great question, and I get this all the time is, okay, cloud, what are you talking about, Zach? So I really want to differentiate between two different types of cloud because they're often conflated, and a lot of people, I'm sure, in Palm Beach Tech's community here are aware of, the differences, but I like to go through it anyway because some people aren't. So hosted cloud, a lot of people are kind of tricked into thinking like this is real cloud, and it's really not. So hosted cloud, which has become popular over the last 10, 15, even before true cloud was really a thing, probably 15, 20 years back, was it functions like the cloud in the sense that you don't have an on-premises server or, your data is not stored and managed on site. It's accessed via something like a web browser or something, but at the end of the day, it is a server somewhere, and you're just paying someone to host it for you. So it's made to emulate true cloud in the sense that there's nothing on site, and it's managed somewhere else, and it's kind of like someone else's concern. But typically, they're spun up for a specific client. Like I would go to a hosting service and say, hey, instead of me having my server on site, you're going to host my server, and then I don't have to deal with it, and I just pay you a monthly fee or, maintenance fees or, whatever the agreement is. So it gives that cloud feeling, but it's not really cloud. And really, when you get down to it, the reasons why are just because at the end of the day, you still have that server. So if you want to do updates, it's still just as time-consuming to do them as if they were on site. If you need to grow, you have to engage with whoever that host is to grow. If you need to add a couple more servers or data warehousing capabilities, you have to work with them one-on-one. And a lot of times it leads to people being locked in because of cost and complexity. When they go to grow or, they want to do updates or change their system, a lot of times they'll, end up not making those changes because they feel locked in because it's, oh, it's going to be $10,000 to do that, or, oh, it's going to take all this time and all these resources. Like, I'm just going to stick with what I have now. So a lot of people, don't take the next step and improve their processes or improve their IT infrastructure just because it's a hassle, so to speak. Whereas true cloud is, think Google, think Amazon Web Services, those big pictures you see with all those, servers in a room somewhere. And really what sets true cloud apart is it's called multi-tenancy. And for those of you who don't know, multi-tenant is when you have a single code base and set of applications that a number of people are sharing. So what that means is there's no longer a one-to-one relationship between your business and the hardware. It's not like your business is accessing a remote server that's sitting over here. It's now your business is accessing a whole, a whole warehouse of servers that you can use as little or as much of for, again, whatever that software's fee is. And there may be, 50,000 other people using that same data center and using that same application that you're using. And really this provides incentives to whoever that host is to update more frequently and allow more end user configuration, because when you have someone like an Amazon Web Services or whoever, the cloud provider is, they now have 50,000 people using their data center, and they're like, wow, if I make an improvement on a single code base, and it's like, wow, if I improve my code base one time, I've increased my, I've improved or enhanced my product for all 50,000 people that are using my code base. It's not a one-to-one, well, if I improve this code base, it's only helping for this one person. No, now it's helping for all the tenants in your multi-tenant environment. And, just by sharing resources, things are more distributed equally. It allows simultaneous delivery. Generally, True Cloud is easier to integrate with. Often they have published APIs, which is an application programming interface. And I put nearly unlimited in quotes because I don't ever like to say anything's unlimited. I try to avoid those ultimatums. But nearly unlimited computing capacity because, again, there's a huge pool of resources that are shared among, many people versus a one-to-one relationship between you and your business and that piece of hardware. So now to kind of take it into the finance side, now that I've given you a little bit of background, or actually, let me stop. Nikki or anyone, are there any questions here at this point? It's probably a good place to ask.
No, Monica, do you see any on social?
No, you can continue. And I'll definitely just drop them in the chat if I do see one.
Okay, cool. I just figured that was a good place a good stopping point. So, okay. So moving into now kind of like, well, what does this mean for, managing my finance team remotely? Like, Zach, this is great. You talked about, working remote, and you talked about all these vague generalities with cloud, but, how does this relate to finance and managing a finance team? So these are all common cloud finance tools that we interact with, and it's not a definitive list. It's just kind of meant to be a nice smattering of different tools that we work with. And they all do something different. Some of these may be ones that you're very familiar with, like Salesforce is almost ubiquitous within the software community as a CRM. Other ones may be less known, like Flowcast is for those of you who are more finance savvy, is a month-end close tool for accountants that's cloud-based. That allows for collaboration and kind of securely being able to, close a company's books at, year-end, quarter-end, month-end, to be able to issue financials with, more, I'll call it, more stability in what you think the numbers actually are and being able to reconcile things and, track changes. And other ones, they all do different things. Gusto's a payroll company. Avalara does helps with sales tax filings. Bill.com had an IPO recently. They're one of the leading accounts payable automation solutions out there. Sage Intacct, which we work with a lot, is a finance cloud ERP system. So ERP is just kind of a fancy way to say like a very fancy higher level for a little bit bigger businesses accounting system. So think like QuickBooks Online, but when QuickBooks Online stops cutting it anymore, Sage Intacct's kind of the next stop. So it's really what I want you guys to get from this is there's lots of tools out there, and there's, again, I picked one from each area. Again, Salesforce is a CRM, Bill.com's AP, they all do different things, but there's many competitors in each of those markets, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. And what I want you guys to take from this slide is that there's not a silver bullet, one software that's automatically going to make your finance team remote working rock stars. Yes, some of these tools will do more than one thing. So Bill.com does a little bit more than just accounts payable. But most of these tools, again, specialize in one area and are great at one piece. And with that, I want to put a little bit of a disclaimer that be wary of any products that are suite products that say they can do it all. So if someone you're working with is saying, oh, I can help you automate your finances, and they're like, yeah, you're just going to have this one software and it's going to do absolutely everything for you, I would be very skeptical of that. Not that it doesn't exist out there, but again, don't ever want to say never, but I would be very skeptical. Really where the cloud finance world is moving to is what's called best of breed or best of class approach, which is, hey, this tool over here works really good for accounts payable and really helps me. I'm going to integrate that with Sage Intacct, which is my accounting system. And let's integrate those together. And, oh, Gusto's really good at payroll and they work really well. Let me do payroll with Gusto and integrate that as well. So it's kind of more of an ecosystem approach versus I'm just going to go find one software tool that's going to do it all for me. And the good news is there are lots of different fintech software on the market, and there's new ones every day, which means you can be extremely selective in the ones that you pick, and means that you're also getting a product that's been born from tons of competition. And we all know that competition brings out, not always the best, but usually brings out a pretty well-developed product. The bad news is that sometimes it can be a little daunting to research and kind of select the right tool. And figuring out, what role it plays within that financial ecosystem. So, if you're looking at AP automation tools, which I'll get into a little later, there's Bill.com, but there's probably 100 other software that do the same thing. And it's like, well, which one's best for me? So sometimes that can be a little daunting. And really, that's what we built at rinehimerbaker, built our whole business model on. We focus on this. This is all we do every day is cloud financial tools. We're subject matter experts. And we're plugged into the communities, not just Palm Beach Tech, but all the other communities in the fintech space that are continually training us, introducing us to these tools, showing us how to use them, showing us use cases. We're talking to other people, what worked for you, what didn't work. And really, that's what our business is based on. Like, that's our business model at the end of the day is focusing on this space and being really good at it and providing our customers with that value, of that knowledge, because it is pretty daunting. So to really talk about the importance of using cloud infrastructure, obviously working remote is on the forefront of almost everyone's mind right now, but the real question, is how to do it effectively. What does it mean for my company? And I want to talk a little bit here is, kind of three areas is where I would say it's the biggest help. One is reducing costs. You get more of those hassle-free updates. It's time savings. It's that enhanced auditability, which is more of a risk reduction in terms of cost. And usually you have better data security. I know some people in Palm Beach Tech are probably going to argue against me on that one and say, well, if I have a server on my site, I 100% have, I'm the master of my universe, versus why would I put my data out in, Amazon Web Services or some cloud provider? And I will just say from the experiences I've had, I've known multiple people that have went that route and gotten burned because they thought they were secure and they weren't as secure as they thought. And then they're like, oh, gee, I wish I wish I was using a cloud service. So, but I'll leave that one open for interpretation. Second bucket being scalability. Again, back to that automation, ability to integrate easily. Again, think that ecosystem approach versus like a suite solution that does everything itself. And really, it comes back to what we talked about or what I talked about in the state of remote work is its flexibility and collaboration. Cloud tools give you that anywhere, anytime access, real-time data, which again, that's what over 50% of, that was over 50% of responses is why people like to work remote is flexibility, being able to access their tools to do their job anywhere when they feel like it, and having everything they need at the time they need it. But collaboration really is a struggle, again, that we talk about. And it's really, this is kind of circling back to my point about Zoom and Teams and stuff like that. Zoom, Teams, Slack, all those tools, they connect us. Like, yeah, they put us in connection with each other. But it's hard to collaborate on higher level functions like finance through just text or video. If I'm working with someone to help close the books at the end of the month, I'm not sending all that data back and forth in Slack to them. Like I need a tool like a Flowcast, for example, to be able to go in, make my updates, submit it to my manager. They can review it, send it back to me. If they're okay with it, they can lock it to show that, they signed off on it and I can't make any more changes. Like that's not something you're going to get just via, Zoom or Slack. And again, I feel like Zoom's probably going to cut me off. I'm like, talking smack about them here today. But again, they serve an important purpose, but you can't rely on just those tools. And one note I kind of want to make a little bit of an aside here on this slide is I'm sure everyone has heard the phrase at some point that your best product ideas come from your customers. And in this case, I want to argue that the best way to learn how to work remotely come from your employees. Granted, you have to have the right tools in place, and listen to your employees and, provide some guidance in cases, to make them, to allow your employees to thrive. But at the end of the day, you can't just throw them to the wolves with no support, and say, hey guys, go work remotely and, you're going to have peak productivity. You really need good tools in place, and it starts by listening to your employees and saying, where are the gaps and how can we help fill them? And that's really what we're here to discuss today. So planning to take your finance team remote. Now I really want to kind of shift gears and talk about, okay, so we've talked a little bit about the background of cloud technology. We've talked about some fintech tools and stuff. How do I do this? How do I, how do I make this happen? Zach, I love what you're saying. How do I make this happen at my company? And really, I would say the biggest piece is planning. And some project managers may or may not agree with me on this, but I would argue in our field that planning is the biggest, most important piece to making your finance department remote. And really it starts with identifying, what team members are involved, who's my finance team, what roles do they fill, what are these people doing every day, what are my key finance workflows being, accounts payable, accounts receivable and collections, payroll, what are each of those areas of my finance team, how important are they and what are we doing? Like, let's really break it down. And then assessing what tools do you have in place now. Like you may have some tools in place now. Maybe you're already using Gusto for payroll. Maybe you got payroll under control. It's like, hey, like this is great. That's not a priority. Like I like what we got going on here. Or so-and-so's got a really great idea that they've already started to implement that's been, paying dividends. Like, we're not going to talk about that right now. Like, we got this under control. And then really once you kind of identify everything, then the next step is to go into assessing, what's working well, what's not working well, and if we start implementing changes, how is this going to affect other areas of our business? Like, is this going to affect our marketing department? Is this going to affect our sales department? Is this going to make our customers more or less happy? Our vendors, if we change our accounts payable process, are we going to get pushback from our vendors, et cetera? Like, then you got to start thinking about, okay, now I've identified everything. If I start changing these things, who are the stakeholders, and like, how's it going to change their relationship with the finance department, both internally and externally? And then, which this goes into the diagram I have on the slide, but it's prioritize. I'm a big proponent of the Pareto principle, which is, 20% of the effort drives 80% of the results, and the other 80% of your effort is usually ineffective and drives the remaining 20% of the results. So again, to my point of planning is most critical, because in really out of planning, I would say prioritizing is almost the most critical, and in asking the questions of, okay, I've identified my team members and what they do, whose time has the highest opportunity cost? Is it the controller? Is it the AP person? Is it the CFO? Who's involved? How valuable is their time? What workflows require the most accuracy and timeliness? And where, and kind of last question is figuring out that 80-20. What improvements could I make that are going to have the biggest impact? Again, I got payroll under control, or, hey, payroll, like I could improve it, but it works for what we're doing. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It only takes, an hour every other week, not a priority. AP, we spend 30 hours a week on accounts payable and paying our bills. Wow, if we automated that, maybe we could get that down to 10 or 15 hours a week. Like, that's a huge time savings. Let's focus on that. So really prioritizing. I would say be critical. Don't hold back. You know, don't sugarcoat things and say, oh yeah, it's okay, and it's really not. Like, you're not going to get great results unless you're hypercritical internally and say, where, you know, really your team puts their heads together and say, where can we improve? And on that note, I would like to say that it's usually best if every finance person is involved with these conversations, or most of these conversations. Because, you know, a lot of times when there's big projects like this, companies, you know, they'll assign and say, hey, you know, so-and-so's in charge of this project and they're making all the decisions, and they may have one or two people that are involved. And they don't include, you know, the lowly bookkeeper or AP clerk or whoever. And really, it ends up hurting them when they go to drive change, because they don't know what that person does on a day-to-day basis because they didn't involve them in the process. And we've oftentimes, you know, in customers we've worked with, you know, we've asked, hey, we want to include these people that you wouldn't traditionally include, that you may not think are, you know, important or higher level executives at the company, but we want to include them in the process. You know, and then when we're doing this planning phases with them, you know, these employees come out with great ideas of, hey, I thought about doing it this way, or hey, this really is a pain point. I spent a lot of time on it this week, and these higher level people never knew that. And sometimes these people are very surprised at what they hear, the feedback they get from their employees. So I would say it's very important, and, you know, to really be collaborative and really include all of your team when you're doing this planning. And this is a little bit more of a short aside, but I would also, when you're in this planning phase, keep in the back of your mind, like, what are the long-term goals for the company? And a lot of this is stuff, you know, that entrepreneurs, a lot of people in Palm Beach Tech are probably thinking about on a day-to-day basis anyway. But, you know, I would really encourage you to think about, you know, what are my goals with this company? What are my departmental goals? You know, if you're the company owner, what are my goals with the company? You know, what are we trying to do? Like, are we trying to scale the business just to increase cash flow? Are we trying to get the business ready because we want to turn around and sell it in 5 years? You know, do we want to go attract VC funding? You know, maybe you're further along in your career and it's like, hey, I want to continue to own this company, but I'm trying to retire soon. Like, I want to make my time input minimal, you know, and I want this to be, you know, a business that I own through retirement, but I don't want to be involved on a day-to-day basis. You know, maybe it's about making your employees happy, and your goal, you know, your cornerstones at your business, hey, we want to make this a great place to work. We want to make people, you know, empower our employees. You know, we want to give them lots of benefits, you know, really make our employees happy. And, you know, when you're going through the planning phase, you know, optimizing your finance department is, in general, you know, when you identify things that need improved, you know, and start looking at improvements, you know, there's certain answers that are better than others, but a lot of times these long-term goals will play into, you know, that, like making your company a very employee-friendly business versus, hey, I'm trying to make it the most attractive to get the highest, you know, multiple when I sell it. That may change your decision-making on, you know, how you're going to automate, you know, and make your finance team remote, just because, you know, getting your business ready for sale has a little bit different considerations than my priority is making my employees happy. So not a big thing, but just something I like to tell people when they're going through these processes. So after you've done your planning, you know, you've prioritized what areas you want to start focusing on, you know, then it really comes down to finding the right solution. And finding the right solution stems from, you know, again, being very critical of your workflows and what you're doing now, and really understanding what your pain points are and what you're trying to fix and improve. You know, as always, you know, there's constraints when it comes to budgets and resource availability and time frames and things like that. But the question I really ask people is, you know, after you've identified those pain points, identified what's most important to you, is ask, what does my ideal solution look like? You know, okay, I've been hitting on accounts payable a lot today. You know, my bill pay process, accounts payable. You know, that's my painful thing. You know, that's what I'm prioritizing to fix first. Okay, I need to find the right solution. The first question I would encourage you to ask is, what would my ideal accounts payable bill pay solution look like? Like, forget any solution that's out on the market, forget what you're doing now. If it was my ideal world, what would it look like? You know, and then when you have that, then you can say, okay, well, here's where I'm at now. Here's where I want to be. Here's, you know, I've waved my magic wand and, you know, here's my ideal solution. Okay. And then it's like bridging the gap between those two, you know, and factoring in, okay, what's my budget? What's my time frame? You know, what are my resources, yada, yada. And then you can kind of start to navigate from here's where I am and here's where I want to be. And that's when you can really be critical about, you know, evaluating, you know, solutions and, you know, what direction you want to go. So again, I've been talking a lot about AP today. And just to give you a little background, you know, in a little bit higher level, you know, enterprise level accounting lingo, it's usually called P2P or procure to pay. And I like to use it as an example a lot just because everyone has bills, everyone has to pay bills. Sometimes it's just as simple as so-and-so emails me a bill and I Venmo them the money. And in big companies, it can be very complex and convoluted and pass through 10 people's hands before the payment goes out. With purchase requisitions and purchase orders and spend management restrictions and approvals. And, you know, sometimes it gets very complex. And it is, again, one of the most common areas that we see people working on. And we have customers that have, you know, we've helped implement solutions for that, you know, if you don't think these solutions are scalable, but they're sending out hundreds and hundreds of checks a month to hundreds of different vendors, and they're not writing one check or mailing one envelope. You know, we've put solutions in place for them to help automate their coding, automate getting the data into their accounting system, you know, take their approval process completely to the cloud. They're approving and paying bills from an app on their phone. The payments are going out automatically via e-payment or a check service. You know, we've really provided a lot of value to some of our customers in this field, and I like to use it as an example, just because it is very relevant. Everybody has to deal with paying their bills. The next thing here was kind of like you see all on the right-hand side of the screen, I have all these, you know, different vendors that do AP automation. And this goes back to my point of there's a bunch of different solutions out there. So Bill.com you saw on the prior slide, but other solutions that provide automated accounts payable are, you know, Tipalti, MineralTree, Stamply, Avid, and those are just a few. Those aren't even, that's probably less than 10%, I would say, of the solutions out on the market. And really where it comes to the value of doing your research and doing your homework is knowing the difference. And again, you know, that's what we've built our business around. So, you know, I can tell you right from now, like Bill.com is probably the best all-around AP solution. Tipalti, it works really well with multi-entity, multi-currency. So if someone came to me and said, hey, Zach, like I've got a business, I'm doing a lot of business in Canada or in the Caribbean, I'm paying people in different currencies. Maybe I've got 2 or 3 different entities set up in different countries, like Tipalti would be my first recommendation to go look at. MineralTree is probably the best or probably the only solution that works if you're in the cannabis industry, because the way they have their payable system set up with the weird kind of laws and money restrictions around how cash moves within the cannabis industry, given that it is still a, you know, federally illegal substance. MineralTree's system is designed that it can work with that. It can do bill pay for cannabis companies, and it's compliant with those laws. And I think at the moment, again, I think that's the only AP automation tool that works there. So, you know, again, if you're a cannabis company, MineralTree is the first one I would, you know, we'd start looking at with you. Stamply's a newer one on the market. I'm not as familiar with it. Avid Exchange works really well with POs and, again, multiple entities. So if maybe you have a more complex purchasing process and you have multiple companies, Avid Exchange would be one that would be on the list. You know, so really my point of running through those different examples here is to prove the point of, yeah, there's all these different solutions. Yeah, they all do the same thing, but they all do different things well. You know, one company's accounts payable solution is not like any of the others. So this is where it really comes into doing your homework or working with a partner, you know, like us, or talking with friends or talking with other companies to see what they've done to really understand, you know, what the best solution for your company would be. And some tips I wanted to go through, and this kind of segues into what I was just saying, but tips to implementing cloud finance tools, not just AP, but anything, is again, talk to people about their experiences. What are other people doing? What have they done? Maybe someone else implemented, a payroll system or a new accounting system, and you go talk to them and they're like, hey, I hate this. It was horrible. It didn't work for my company. I was the wrong, their workflows didn't match up with mine. But, you start talking with them and it's like, hey, it didn't work for you, but the reason it didn't work for you is why it's going to work for me. So I'm going to go look at that one, just talking to people. And that's a large part of what Palm Beach Tech in general is just about, is working with other people. So definitely encourage that. Again, doing your research. G2 Crowd, Gartner, those are great independent organizations that rate and do reviews of different software. You can see I have a G2 Crowd report at the bottom, looking at a couple different GL softwares. This goes more into project management, but setting clear, defined, measurable goals. I've seen a lot of projects that people have tried to do on their own fail just because they don't set the proper goals. They say, oh, I'm going to change, payroll systems, and they kind of start changing, and then they run into some hiccups, and then another project comes up, and then, next thing you know, it's 18 months later, and they're still running payroll on 2 different systems, and they never quite transitioned over, and it's just because they didn't set goals, and, they didn't plan properly. Another tip I would go into is appointing power users. So in our company, when we work with people, and even within our company and, and customers' companies, we usually recommend that there be a power user or multiple people that are power users. So if you have, say you use Sage Intact for your, GL accounting system, and there's 10 people in your department that use it, we would recommend that, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of those people really dig into it, go to Intact's conference every year, take a lot of classes, like really become power users and become an internal resource. And there's a lot of different reasons for that, but we find a lot of benefit in having power users. And it may not be the same power user. Maybe you're using Bill.com and Intact, and maybe the power user for Bill.com in your finance department is different from Intact. That's, a lot of times we see that, and helps, spread out, the responsibility of the knowledge, so to speak. And, at the end, kind of, a shameless plug here is obviously the easy thing to do is, partner with a company like us. Again, this is all we do all day, every day, is helping people with cloud finance tools, helping people work remotely. Leveraging us alleviates not only you having to do all the research yourself, but also, we know what questions to ask and things to look that are often overlooked when you're doing that deep planning in the beginning. And like I've said, the planning research part is really the most important part, and where we like to spend our time, and feel like we add a lot of value because we do have a lot of experience in that planning phase. And of course, we help with implementation and ongoing support, helping you set those reasonable goals and executing to get there. We still recommend our customers to have those power users, but often, we're kind of the power users behind the scene that are the fallback when maybe your internal power user runs into a unique situation or runs into something that they can't handle. So it's nice to kind of, I'll call ourselves like a little bit of having a safety net of us to work with. So, but anyway, that's the end of my shameless plug for rinehimerbaker. And really, just to wrap up, the last thing I want to say is don't hold back. This will be my last tip. Moving to working remote is a total shift in thinking and working, not just a matter of implementing a new software and saying, hey, I implemented Bill.com, Zach, my accounts payable is automated, like I'm done. Making these changes truly requires your whole team to be on board and working towards the same vision. And even 1 or 2 people that are more on this conservative or skeptic side of this graph here, I've seen can tank a whole initiative. If you have a finance department with 6 people in it, and 2 of them are like, oh, I don't know about cloud. I've always written checks by hand. I don't want to go to an automated, payable system, or I've always worked with this payroll company. I don't want to switch. It can tank really the whole initiative of making your finance team remote friendly. And that's not to speak poorly of any one person or anything, but it really is true that, a few rotten apples can spoil the bunch. So I would say it's definitely have your team on board and make sure everyone's on with the vision. And really it needs to be not just within the finance department, but it really needs to be a priority company-wide. Yeah, you can make bill pay or collections remote friendly, and it may not necessarily affect, your sales department or HR department, but I like to go back to the saying, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and finance data oftentimes more than not spills into every other part of the company. So moving to remote finances and working remotely is not just, a team or a departmental effort, but really, again, part of the vision thing. It's really a company vision. Companies that are bought into, how do I make my team remote friendly, typically have the best results. And, you're going to make the most impact and be the most successful company if you achieve your goal, if you achieve your goals faster and are on more of that, on this graph, that visionary, pragmatic side, and being early adopters, or more on the, left-hand side of this graph over here. There's kudos to those that can jump that chasm and be in the technology enthusiast or visionary category, that have that enough forward thinking to be there. But even those in the, I would say at the end of the day, you want to be at least a pragmatist and not be holding back and really, accelerating your company, because we want to be, I'll say it sounds kind of cheesy, but, we want to be Netflix, not Blockbuster. And Netflix is the technology enthusiast and Blockbuster is the skeptic. And looking at what others are doing and having inhibitions based on what you see other companies doing can be dangerous, because just the way statistics work, 50% of companies automatically fall into that conservative and skeptic category, whether you know it or not. And again, the key to that is really being critical of yourself in that planning phase and recognizing where your weaknesses are and saying, hey, I am in the skeptic side. I am a conservative when it comes to this, and here's how I'm going to address it. If you're not critical, you're not going to get yourself over the hump of the bell curve. And really, I mean, the moral of the story and where I want to leave this off before we open it up for questions is don't implement a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Although it may seem never-ending now, COVID is ultimately a temporary circumstance, but I can guarantee you that working remotely and the benefits of cloud financial systems are not. Avoid workarounds with the anticipation that, down the road, it's going to be back to business as usual. COVID's going to be gone in a year or two. Everybody's going to go back to the office. It's going to be great, and that's not going to happen. Again, back to the beginning, people love working remote. They love that flexibility. And even when COVID's gone, people are going to expect that. Now, I was actually on a call yesterday with a colleague, and he summed it up very nicely. He said, COVID didn't necessarily advance the cloud tools and automation tools that are available for finance departments, but it advanced the adoption of them significantly. So everything's been available. I would say nothing's really changed as far as availability, but people are now being forced to use them. And I would just say, don't implement a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Don't think that this is going away. Remote work is really the future of work. And one last thing before I open it up for questions, I do know we're going to be sending out a survey after today's call. I'm glad I remembered this because my marketing department would have chided me significantly if I forgot to say this. But there's a survey that's going after today's call, and everyone who completes it gets a $5 gift card, I believe, to Starbucks it is. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's a $5 Starbucks gift card. And I saw the survey. It's literally like 6 questions, so it's well worth your time to get the $5 gift card. So with that, I will stop talking. I know I'm very good at that, and I will open it up for questions or any final comments.
Thank you, Zach. And yeah, Catherine was good. She already sent that to me, so I got it.
Okay,
awesome. On top of
I'm glad I remembered that.
Yeah, and I actually do have, I think it's like 4 questions that came through private chat. And anybody else that's listening right now, through Zoom, please feel free to take yourselves off mute if you do as well. So the first one, I think it was towards an earlier slide that you had up, but said, if cloud is so much easier and better for organizations, then why are there still companies that still have on-premise software? And what's the main reason or even excuse that they use to not move to the cloud?
So I would say the short answer to that is people don't like change. That's the simplest answer is people. I would say the 2 biggest arguments I get is obviously people just don't like change. You have and you would be surprised. And if anything, it's not even really like an age thing. It's just more of a mindset. I've had young people that are, my age say, oh, I don't want to change. I don't like change this way. I've always done it. And I've equally had 75-year-old people that have told me that. Just a fear of change. Hey, this works. And I've done it I've always signed checks on Thursday at 2 with a purple pen. I'm not going to change it because that's what I've done in my business the last 20 years. So fear of change is one. Two is, again, sometimes we get pushback about data security. People say, oh, if I have my server here, I'm the lord of my universe. I can control who has access to that server, what happens. And then, hurricane, I don't know how to say it, Isaiah comes along and your roof caves in and now all of a sudden your server's gone and all your data's gone because you haven't backed it up in the last 2 months. Or, I've had multiple customers that actually ended up coming to us because their server or their on-premises, data crashed or was corrupted. And then they realized like, oh, my IT team was supposed to be doing backups every week, and they haven't done backups in the last 6 weeks or, 6 weeks here, or they've been doing backups, but the backups were corrupted because they didn't check the backups. So kind of those are the two biggest arguments I would say I get back for changing from on-prem to cloud. Yeah.
Well, and I think with us just being South Florida Tech now, it makes sense, the hurricane example, because I think we have to deal with that quite often. So it's a good one. But I'm sure a lot of people don't think about it until it happens to them.
Yeah, it's part of it too. Is just the price. People don't want to change. They think it's expensive, and it's really not. They see a higher subscription fee a lot of times with moving to the cloud. So on a month-to-month basis, it might be a little more expensive, but it's less upfront cost. And over the life of the time you'll be using the product, cloud is 9 times out of 10 cheaper, because it's like, oh yeah, you may be paying twice as much per month to for a cloud service versus maybe what you're paying to internally manage a server. But oops, when you have to buy a new server 2 years from now and it's a $30,000 server rack, okay, amortize that over the last 2 or 3 years and now it's more expensive.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. Let me see, I think 3 more. So the question was, how does moving to the cloud change the dynamic of your accounting or finance team? And will employees need to pick up different skills? Sorry, it's kind of like a 3-point part question, or more or less of them be needed? I think they mean like the people. So like, how does it, so it sounds like overall, how does it moving to the cloud change the whole dynamic of the team? And like, will the current team need more skills, or will you need more people or less people to do it?
So the dynamic change is that cloud is easier to access. So the simplest way, and if anything, I like talking to Palm Beach Tech because a lot of people in the tech community understand these things much more than the lay person. But I always equate accessing a cloud tool to like Facebook. You go online to a web browser and you log in. Whereas on-premises solutions or hosted solutions, there's a VPN or something into it. A lot of times it's slow. Maybe only 1 or 2 people can be logged in at a time. So that collaboration is not nearly as strong. Again, it maybe can exist to a degree, but it's not nearly as good as cloud. So I would say, moving to the cloud just gives you a lot more flexibility of collaboration. It's almost kind of like Google Sheets. Everybody can access and make changes at the same time. They're saved real time. It's real-time data. And as far as like the personnel side goes, the goal with all of everybody we work with is, yes, to save people time. So the idea is that, yeah, if you have an AP person that's spending 40 hours a week doing AP now, again, it's case by case. Maybe you can save them 5 hours a week. Maybe you can save them 20 hours a week. Who knows? And really our goal is not so much to put people out of jobs. We get that as a fear a lot of times of, again, fear of change. People are afraid, you're going to automate this. I'm going to lose my job. The robot's going to take my job. The software's going to take my job. And really it's not about displacing anybody. It's about being able to take your time from being focused on those low value routine tasks and being able to focus on high value add. So instead of spending 40 hours a week on processing accounts payable, you're spending 20 hours a week on processing accounts payable, and the other 20 hours a week dealing with your vendors, getting better terms, working with the CFO. How can we improve our cash flow? Working on those high value add items versus just punching in numbers into a spreadsheet. So that's really what we try to do.
Yeah, it makes complete sense, because we hear that in other areas, too, of technology, as people are always worried about it taking their positions. But I think if anything, in the end, it's going to create more roles, just different types of roles. And then of course, like you said, it being able to automate the things that we don't want to do, those mundane tasks, and being able to spend time somewhere else. I think that is a good point, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people that worry about that.
Yeah.
I have two more questions here. Okay, so digital transformation is a people effort and not just the technology. Says many people have been told that, but are there other people or departments connected to accounting or finance that should be included in the decision when moving to the cloud? So it sounds like maybe other departments that are not in accounting and finance.
Yeah. So I probably didn't talk in depth enough about that. I did make the comment that people should be considering other departments, and part of that goes back to that planning phase and identifying who's involved. And I think part of my answer, half my answer here, I'll take an easy way out and say, once you go through the planning, it'll become evident who's involved and what people you need to talk to. But the other half of my question, I'll give a little bit more of hopefully a more developed answer here is, at the end of the day, a lot of people don't realize how much finance touches every part of their company. So like Salesforce, this is an easy example. So Salesforce, that affects your sales department and your finance department, because if you have a sales team, maybe they're entering orders, booking orders, doing renewals of contracts for customers, and all that data is being fed over to the accounting team because, they're having to book those orders, make sure that the money gets collected, make sure the money's applied properly. If there's changes to the contract, there's on contracts, there's all kinds of accounting, considerations with deferred revenue and, contract length and performance terms and all these things that, if you're a company that's audited or a software company, a lot of very complex, higher level accounting requirements, and how that data feeds over from the sales department can make the accounting department's job much easier or much harder. So like an example is Salesforce is commonly integrated with Sage Intacct, because when the sales team goes in, they book an order, maybe they set up a new customer, renew a customer's contract, change their contract, it's integrated with Sage Intacct, and it feeds that data into that system, automatically creates the renewal, adds the new customer into the system, so it's no longer sending a memo from the sales department to the accounting department, and the accounting department's rekeying all of that data into the accounting system, setting the customer's name, address, phone number, all that stuff. It's automatically syncing over from Salesforce into Intacct, and then the accounting department just saying, oh, we've got a new customer here, we need to go bill them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so that's an example.
Yeah, well, say your example of even using Salesforce, that reminds me of a past job where we had a software, I think, that was just kind of built in-house with some of the technical team. And we had like 5 or 6 different things that we always had to log in. They didn't talk to each other. It was always a pain to be able to do one thing. But then when we, implemented Salesforce and a couple other technology, and they all kind of talked to each other, it was so much easier to send invoices and communicate with other departments. And to your point earlier, it made not only our jobs and our lives much easier, but then again, we could spend the time, because for me at that job, I was in sales, I could spend much more time doing that than the administrative side of my job, which was not the fun part.
Yeah, exactly. And like in the Salesforce link, one of the things is it helps the sales department too, because a lot of times the sales departments, their big thing is obviously commissions and bonuses. They're always sending the accounting department messages. Did this person pay? Am I going to get my bonus? Blah, blah, blah. Where when Salesforce and Intacct are connected, Intacct will automatically feed back and say, yes, this contract renewal has been updated and the customer paid on Thursday. So Exactly. It's less data requests going to accounting. So it's less of the salespeople's time. They have visibility of the data themselves. It's less time on the accounting staff because they're not pulling the data and sending it back to sales. So again, that's where I kind of was segueing a little bit into, it's a whole company transition, and the finance a lot of times it has its fingers in a lot of other parts of the company that people just don't realize.
And just for my personal curiosity, is Sage one of the more popular ones too? Because the company I'm thinking of, they actually use Salesforce and Sage as well.
So so a little bit of history of Sage Intacct. So it used to be until, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, it used to be just Intacct. It was a VC funded out of San Jose, California. It was, I would argue, the first fully cloud-based, large, usable accounting system that was, market ready. And they were acquired by Sage Company, which is a publicly traded UK firm, 2 or 3 years ago, because Sage No one really saw it coming, but honestly, it made a lot of sense in Sage's world because they've been trying to get in the cloud market because Sage was seeing what's coming and saying, hey, like a lot of their solutions, existing solutions are on premises or hosted of some sort. And they were really trying to get into the cloud game, and they had made some internal products that were, okay, or, they focused only on smaller companies. And they really wanted to be able to have a robust, cloud-based ERP system that could be used from small companies up to companies that, are publicly traded, which Intact works with. And they decided, hey, it's cheaper for us to go buy Intact. They're the best at the game right now. Let's just go acquire them. Why would we spend all the time to try to make an internal product and compete with them, and we're probably going to lose?
Wow. You're a host of knowledge over there. I wasn't expecting a history lesson either.
I'm sorry.
Awesome that you even
I'm
knew
very
that.
loquacious if no one's learned yet.
No, I was not expecting that you would even know that. That's awesome. So last time, and we are just slightly over time, which is fine, but just wanted to make sure to let people know we're just about to wrap up for anybody that's still on. Last question I got was, so it says you talked about how important planning is. Is there one or two things in the planning process that most companies miss or just don't think about?
I would go back again. I'll take the first response I'll give as an easy response is, like I said, people don't include all the right people. And part of that's just a leadership skill of sometimes people have this desire to be, I'm in charge, I'm the controller, I'm the CFO, this is my project, I'm not going to include everybody in it. And again, like I talked about, like it's really important, even if it's not all the meetings or the budget meetings or what the company's spending, like include everybody that this is going to affect. If you're doing Salesforce stuff, include the sales team in on these conversations. Hey guys, when you're booking contracts and renewals, what's your pain point? Like what works well, what wastes your time as a sales team? Like what are you doing? And are you sending requests to the accounting department all the time that's wasting 3 hours of your week that you could be calling people and making sales those 3 hours a week? So I would say one is, again, just including everybody in the process. And we've seen people, fail to do that, or they need nudged from us to kind of be like, we promise, we're not going to divulge anything they don't need to know, like include people. So that would be one. Two, again, something I mentioned is just not being critical enough. People, they want to sugarcoat and, Susie Q does payroll. She does a great job. She's been here 10 years. That don't have to worry about payroll. No, well, does payroll work well or does it not? And again, this isn't about taking anybody's job or making anybody look bad or, placing blame or anything. It's just you're not going to get better unless you're really critical of what you guys are doing, your processes, and what needs to be, where your priorities and prioritization and just understanding what's wrong. So I would encourage people to be brutally honest with themselves if I had to give it a term. And anything outside of that, go ahead.
No, it sounds like with a lot of the points that you're making too, is that it's really going from paper and even on-site, hosting, is that it's really with the true digital transformation of this is that it's a people thing, is that you have to look at every single step of the process, have to include everybody that's in that process to make sure that you have buy-in. Because I know even with, other sides of digital transformation with different, platforms that we've talked about at other events, is like you said, is that, you can have somebody that's part of the leadership team that says, hey, this is what we're going to do. But then when you push it down to the team, you can have one or two people that say, nope, I'm not using it, I don't like it. And then your whole process and planning and everything that you're trying to do just went out the window.
Yeah, no. And I can speak from that personally, because actually, where my wife works, they implemented a cloud tool recently to help with their accounts payable. And there's one guy there that kind of is probably one of the more, one of the employees that's been there the longest, and is, good at his job, always taking care of the company well. And he still to this day, he is very against this tool that they've been using. And I told my wife, cause she's like, oh, I don't know if it's, we're going to continue to use it. Like he's really given a lot of pushback, but luckily the owner's been on board and has said, I get that you don't like it, but we're going to keep doing it. So luckily good on him for that. But, and I told my wife, I said, the best thing you can do here is be an expert in that software. Cause guess what? In 2 or 3 years, when the dividends are paid back and you're the power user of that software and he's not, who's the owner going to look to? You, not him.
Exactly. Good point. Very good point. I think that's a perfect place to end it. I love that story. And yes, that was a perfect point. And I think anybody that kind of to one of your last screens there, just kind of dives in and does it, and gets used to being, what is it, the saying of being comfortable with being uncomfortable, that there will definitely be positive results from that for sure. I think it's just the fear of newness.
Fear of change.
Again, I wanted to thank you for everything this morning. I know that you had mentioned we'll get the slide, the survey. So anything, Catherine or Zach, that you guys want to email me afterwards, we're going to send a follow-up email to everybody, and we'll make sure to get that out. And again, I appreciate everybody that came on this morning as well and is listening on social also. So I hope you guys all have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks to all the listeners for tolerating listening to me for an hour about finance and accounting, no less.
It wasn't too bad this morning. It wasn't bad, Zach. All right. Everybody have a great day.
Awesome.
Thank you.